Hey George, how's it going?
Good. How are you, Joe?
Great, thanks. Thanks for joining the Data Nerd Herd today.
Thanks for having me.
Awesome. So today on the Data Nerd Herd, we have George Firican. For people who don't know who you are, do you want to give a quick intro?
Well, to sum it up, I'm a data governance practitioner. That's really my role at the University of British Columbia, data governance and BI. I'm the director there, but I'm also the founder of lightsondata.com, really trying to provide practical content in forms of courses and articles, templates, videos to fellow data management professionals.
Nice. Yeah, I think that's how we got connected too. I think me and the Data Heretics were on one of your shows at one point, and still proudly wear your T-shirt. They sent over for the Lights Out Data
Appreciate
show,
that.
so thanks for that. Yeah, it's awesome. It's actually really comfortable. So, how did you find yourself getting into the data space? I always like to ask this of guests. It seems like people come from different paths into the space, but here we all are. What
You
was
know,
your what was your journey?
it's an interesting journey because I kind of wish people would just out of the education sphere graduate and just go into the data space or in the data management. That wasn't the case for me, and I don't think there are really any tracks right now for that, to be honest. But I started
Hmm.
as a programmer, so front end, back end was really one of my passions. And then as I was really starting to work more with databases and software that would obviously involve databases, most of them would be customer facing. I would start to further understand the impact of data, the prevalence of data. And then I sort of transition into business analysis and project management. And as I was doing so, I was then interacting with the customer end as well. And I could see all the different connections that I was maybe unable to see as a programmer. And I couldn't quite see the ramifications on some of the things that we would program. Um, and yeah, and then I went more into the importance of data quality and what needs to be done there. And then I soon found out that you can't really have data quality without good data governance. So it's really a slow transition, and I was learning on the job at times. And that's how I ended up doing this now full time to just focus on data governance piece. And we also noticed quite a connection and interdependency with the business intelligence piece, and
Hmm.
hence the sort of merge of the department that I'm leading right now.
That's a really interesting path, I think, towards I guess discovering data governance and data management, right? It's because I think it's one of the more peculiar paths I've seen so far. Starting out as a software engineer, then moving into data.
Yeah,
Normally,
and
I don't see that progression happening.
it's different because it's really dealing with the people side of things a lot more than a programmer would. So sometimes I'm kind of missing that part. Plus, I'm an introvert, so I always need to, recuperate after some of these meetings. There's a lot of politics and convincing to do for sure.
Hmm. Probably more so than with the software engineering too. I think with engineering, I've done that myself, and it's just do your thing, and you kind of separated away from the business. I find that really interesting that you kind of migrated towards being an analyst and then data quality and governance and so forth. I mean, so I mean, take a step back. I mean, what got you into software engineering in the first place? It's
That's yeah. Well, that's sort of like what I progressed into. I think second year in university, that's what I transitioned into. First year was still a little bit of exploratory. I was trying to take some computer science courses, and second year it got a little bit heavier when I think the first program that we developed was like a web browser, which was in Java, and it was something that was a little bit more, I guess, graphical in terms of the usage and everything, and you could see the um, the impact right away and people using it and commenting on it, and you're kind of getting joy out of it. So I would just wanted to build more and learn more about it. Then we went into like exploring different algorithms for archiving data and everything, and um, so the passion kind of just came with learning more about it. And it was also a field that would guarantee a job afterwards.
mm-hmm.
And the prospects looked promising. Like initially I wanted to go into marketing,
Interesting.
so it's such a different thing, but that's also because I have a passion for design and creating, and so now I kind of just do that with my own videos, and I have like arts project on the side for fun.
Hmm. And I guess yeah, I mean, you kind of glossed over this, but like, how did you find yourself getting into BI and analytics then? 'Cause it's I almost consider those two separate realms almost from engineering to BI. Like I said, this it just struck me as curious in a way because I don't think I've met that many people who have made that leap.
Yeah, well, my couple of my first jobs were for just small startups, small teams. So you kind of had to wear different hats to do different things. So for one of the projects that I was on to implement this like financial management system, basically we had to develop some reports. I think it was in Crystal Reports at the time,
Oh wow, it's old
and
school.
yeah, and I think that's kind of got me on that path. Just kind of had again to learn on the job and do that part as well as we were under resourced. So
Hmm.
yeah,
It's cool.
by the way, I think it's I would recommend this to anybody to work for with a small team at one point, just because it gives you the ability to wear different hats, learn different things, try it out and see what do you like, what you don't like. It's a great learning opportunity.
Yeah, I totally agree. I've worked on small teams as well, and I think it's a good experience. You get to find out really quickly what you like to do, what you don't like to do. But I think you
Hmm.
also learn how to be scrappy, which I think is a really good quality for people.
Hmm.
If you're at a big company, you have a lot of resources at your disposal. When you're on a small team, maybe with not as many resources, you really have to figure things out I think, in an efficient way. So,
That's true. There's so many stories with companies that really grew, and as they're growing, they weren't as efficient anymore, just
mhm,
because they had the funding necessary to kind of draw it out in a way, make sure that things are better. But in that pursuit for perfection, they would also create some inefficiencies.
yeah, for sure. Um, I mean, how's that scrappiness translated into the kind of work you're doing right now with Lights on Data?
Well, the reason why I started Lights on Data in the first place was I really thought there was still a lot of confusion on data management and data governance in particular. There's definitely, if you Google data governance, you find a lot of stuff, not all
Hmm.
of it relevant. There are a lot of misconceptions, a lot of maybe vendors trying to capitalize on the coolness maybe of the topic. I don't know. Maybe that's wishful thinking, saying coolness, but it is to
I
me.
was going to say it's we talk more about
Well,
that.
sometimes it comes into focus, right? Sometimes when you hear, like last year in October, Citigroup was fined $400 million, and in one of the reports for the fine, they specifically said for a lack of data governance. So, that's one example when data governance came into focus, was kind of all over the news, and organizations or some vendors would kind of jump on that opportunity saying, we can help you with your data governance issues. You don't want to be like Citibank and have to pay $400 million. So maybe coolness from that factor. But yeah, so I really, in my journey as well into this field, I found out again. I learned a lot about on the job. There was no really practical takeaways, templates that I could use, resources that I could just go to and say, "Oh yeah, I want to do something like this for my needs, for my organization." So it was a way for me to give back from my own learnings. I was part of the this data governance organization, nonprofit for professionals, and I was part of their board, and it really gave me a chance to interact with a lot more organizations and kind of hear their stories, their challenges, their best practices. So I learned a lot from that too. And again, in doing so, I thought it was just a way for me to give back to people on resources that I didn't have when I started my journey.
Hmm. I do agree. It's a very opaque topic. I know for
Mm.
the book I've been writing on data engineering, we've realized data management, for example, as DM Bach would probably describe it, it underpins a lot of data engineering. But then you start digging into, okay, so apart from their definitions of data management and data governance, to your point, you start looking at data governance and seeing how it's defined. I think I was more confused than when I started. So um, it's been a struggle. It's just such a squishy thing, and I think to your point, there's a lot of vendor related materials that I think have kind of ulterior motives in a lot of ways to sell you products. And there's other things I think where people take a stab at data governance, but I'm not sure they really maybe thought a bit more kind of underneath the layers what it means. What do you think data governance is?
Yeah, and you're completely right. And in so many ways, it means different things to different organizations, depending how they want to tackle it. And there's different aspects of data governance. But I do have a couple of slides if I can share that with you,
Yeah,
I
let me
thought a
add these
visual
in.
might help to kind of showcase what data governance means, at least to me, really. So I think we can all agree, with this slide that I think, data is valuable and data is an asset. And definitely, data analytics, data science is providing and capitalizing on that asset, data being an asset piece, right? But for data to transform into value, usually you don't have a direct path, especially if you want, good value. You definitely need good data, and you don't always start with that good data. So there's a lot of things that really need to happen in between before when you're starting ingesting this data to the point that you're getting value out of it. So I think you need to integrate it, transform it, interoperate it, analyze it, model it, disseminate it. Really, just name a few of the things that I think that we need to do with our data. Besides this, our data needs to be cleaned, made consistent, accessible to the right people, accessible to the right systems, secured, defined, and understood. So, in other words, our data needs to be managed. And we need to manage our data if we're going to get value out of it, if we're going to get consistency and accuracy in our reports, in our data models, in our analytical models, have that single view of our customer, get actionable information that really informs our business decisions, and in essence, really enable us to be a data-driven organization. But back to all of the things that need to be done with it. So I mentioned it needs to be clean, consistent, accessible, secure, defined, and understood, among other things. So how do we know what this desired behavior should be? Behavior having clean data, documented metadata, categorized and classified data, and so on. Well, in order for us to have that, we need some sort of policies. We need policies. Now, what are the steps to clean our data, to make it consistent, to provide access, to secure it, to define it? Well, we also need processes for that. How do we ensure consistency in our data cleanliness, in our definitions, metadata definitions, and so on? Well, we need standards. And who is going to create all these policies, all the processes, all the standards and rules and definitions? Who will approve them? Who will maintain them? Who will enforce them? Well, we need roles and responsibilities. So all of this that we have here in the triangle and the sort of roof of the house, I call data governance. And everything, by the way, as a whole, including data governance, it's falls under data management. So to me, data governance is a discipline that provides the policies, processes, standards, roles, and responsibilities needed to ensure that data is managed as an asset. So let me know if that's a little bit more clear.
No, I like this. Yeah, I think this is roughly what we stabbed at too, something along these lines. Because I think
you're right. You're right with DEMA, this is sort of the DEMA knowledge areas wheel, which includes all these different things. And as you mentioned, data engineer really is touching on some of these, right? On like data storage and operations, data architecture, data integration, interoperability. There's a lot of that, right? Even reference data and data warehousing. So it's like a mix of different areas. And same with data quality, and like they all kind of really play with one another. And in so many ways, it's unfair to just put them in these buckets as there are so many connections. But sometimes what data governance kind of trying to make a bridge as well to make sure that, if we're going to integrate data, if we're going to clean it, if we're going to surface it somewhere, if we're going to store it, if we're going to secure it, we need some sort of a standard for it. And we shouldn't have to replicate that every time. So data governance is helping to work with these units, if you will, or experts in all these different areas to put that standard together as one example of what data governance would do.
Mm-hmm. What I find interesting, and you're probably not in the data engineering world too, as seeing some of these things, but what I notice is a lot of these aspects of data governance in this DEMA pick, for example. I find more and more data engineers are focusing on these areas now because I think that because of the low level tooling has become a lot simpler to use. Mm-hmm. people are moving upstream to more value add stuff, data quality, for example, metadata, all these other aspects of governance. And I'm seeing it in smaller and smaller companies now, whereas before it seemed like this was something that was reserved for people with, or companies with very large budgets and could actually effectively do this stuff. Most smaller, or I would say data immature companies, just weren't at the point where they could do this. But more and more, it seems like this is becoming a wider topic of discussion. So I find it very interesting. I mean, what's your experience? What are the challenges of companies doing data governance right?
Well, there's a few. The one that comes to mind, the first one that comes to mind is that data governance is not really an IT program,
Yep.
or it's not something that IT should lead. And a lot of the times they do. I think maybe the name data governance doesn't help. Both data and both governance. And I mean, it makes sense why it is named that way. But it also gives a message to the business that, oh, this is an IT thing because it's a data thing. It has something, it's technical, it's tools related, it's technology, but it's not really. It's the people, the processes, the policies. So I think it's the business that needs to lead these efforts and lead data governance, because they're the ones that understand the business needs. They're the ones that understand the business requirements that need to be put in place for the data to really match and support them. So that's the first thing. And by the way, whenever IT should be a partner, like a really strong collaborator, they're definitely at the table, but they shouldn't drive the decisions of, what needs to be done when. They should be more in a collaborative capacity over there. And when IT is the one that's leading this, usually data governance is done from the point of view of an application, usually like an ERP or something. So they're saying, oh, well, now we need to have just an organization-wide ERP, so we might have to integrate all these different systems that were handling different pieces before, one for HR, one for finance, one for, I don't know, like operations, supply chain, stuff like that. We're just going to merge them into one, and we need some data governance to make it happen. And when this is done, the program is focused from an application point of view. The application is really dictating the verbiage and the limitations and everything. And really data governance, and same with, in data engineering, it should be done in a way tool agnostic. Right? You should just come up with, well, what are the needs there? What do we need our data to do? And what do we need it for? And how do we need it? We don't want to be subjected to the application to constrict us into how we should store it and how we should manage our data. Sure, I mean, those requirements are there, but we should have something maybe like a data catalog point of view where anybody, regardless of their application technical needs, can consume this data and then, I guess, transform it to their own needs. But
who should be leading data governance, do you think?
Well, again, the business. So usually you have this executive body that's formed from different, high-level individuals on that org chart. So usually like VP level individuals. Usually each line of business would have a seat at the table. And they're kind of the ones, again, deciding the priorities of data governance. Well, saying, we think data governance should focus on this. Then, of course, you're going to have your data governance office and your data governance lead, who, again, might be lucky if they have an office with other people in their team. But they will be the ones that would then say, okay, well, you're saying we should focus on this. We decide how we should do it. What are the best practices that we should follow in order to meet your needs, your requirements. Interesting.
Why is it that you think IT tends, from what I've noticed, IT tends to lead a lot of these data governance initiatives? Do you have an opinion on why that might be?
Well, I mean, I think they have some immediate needs that need to be addressed from a technical point of view. They have to deal with these requests from the business on a daily basis that, hey, we need reports right away. We need to integrate the systems to have a, one customer view. Hey, we need to provide our data scientists with their proper data in order for them to I don't know, model this or estimate this. So I think it's sort of just a reactive way of dealing with some of their day-to-day requests, and and somebody needs to do it. And sometimes this is done from the bottom up, and IT usually comes as a lead because they have all these technical considerations already in the back of their mind.
Interesting.
But again, the message needs to be shift, and it's okay if IT comes up with the idea maybe, but I think they need to put that business case together to get that support and engagement from the business.
I mean, how important is it to get the support of like the CEO, for example?
Joe, I think like same with any data science project. I think it's crucial to have the support of that C-level executive to because everything really trickles from the top down afterwards. I think it's a lot easier to secure resources if you have their support. I think it's a lot easier to grow, but not only that, I think it's a lot easier to have something that's enterprise wide and not just from the point of view of one application or from the point of view of one business unit. And what happens if you don't have that support and you start from the point of view of one business unit or one application, you're starting to make these decisions which are very siloed and unbeknownst to you are starting to affect other parts of the organization. And then rework has to happen, and there's a lot of churning. It's a lot of inefficiency being created, really, and the downstream effects that maybe you didn't even plan for.
Right, that can happen a lot, especially with data. Where the effects of bad data and bad data choices might not even be recognized for who knows.
Exactly. And sometimes, like if we talk about data quality, let's say you have the best intention to clean it, and you do for, let's say you're cleaning it for your like data science project for like this AI piece that you're trying to put together, and it really makes sense to you to clean it this way, and you want to do something that's recurring and not just a one-time thing. So you put in the processes together, and you're doing the ETLs in the right way so that it gets saved in this database for others to use. But when you have it cleaned, even though it's cleaned, maybe you're taking away certain information, you're truncating it, that it is useful for other business units that maybe you were not aware of. As one example.
Yeah, I see something. Do you see a lot of like rogue data governance projects then in your work?
Yes. I think most data governance programs start from a business unit perspective. Just because it's easier. Because whoever's starting this, I mean, they have their best intentions. And it's just easier because, well, it doesn't have to be enterprise wide. You don't need to include other business units that you don't know anything about. You don't know the people there. There's different politics that you would have to deal with if you do. And decisions are quicker to make if you just include the people that I guess, and the business that you're aware of.
Interesting. So have you seen like competing data governance projects then? It's sort of a slight twist on the rogue part, but have you seen two that like data governance projects that actually might be at odds with each other?
Yes.
Oh.
Well, and it's not maybe fully fledged programs, but it's really initiatives or some decisions that are being taken.
Interesting.
Yeah. So again, it's when these decisions are being taken by different business units, and there's different like models, operating models for data governance, and maybe I'll go down a rabbit hole if I go into that.
Those, yeah.
But yeah, when you do that, what happens at times when some of these decisions are taken about a similar or the same data domain. So a data domain being like a customer or sales or legal or product. So it's sort of encompassing anything, like any business unit, any application that is working with this type of data is not just subjected to one table, one application, one database. What you do as a business unit, you're like, well, this is how we define the legal name of a customer, which again could conflict with how another business would define it. And then they start making some changes in the applications they are working with, but then also that another business unit is working with. and they're not aware again of the downstream effect that they're having on the other business unit when these decisions are taken under isolation.
Yeah, I could see this being a problem. I've seen some clients of ours, for example, they'll have like 6 different definitions of customer, for example, right?
Exactly. I have so many examples of that, of like big organizations dealing with this. And then what happens is when the CEO is asking, okay, give me the report, how many customers we have, they're asking from different people, different departments, or different sides of the business. They're getting different totals. And why? Because, for example, telecom company, marketing is saying, well, our customers is really anybody that opened our like campaigns, email campaigns or something, right? Sales is saying, well, it's anybody that we actually sold a package to, like a cell phone package to. And what's it called? The like supply chain is, well, it's anybody that bought our SIM cards. So, from their point of view, that's what customer means and that's what they worry about. But from the CEO point of view, well, they don't know that at times and they're confused. Why am I getting different numbers here? Can we just all agree and get one? So one solution to that is to actually define it as such, well, this is the supply chain customer. This is the marketing customer. And then have another enterprise wide of what customer means.
Interesting. What's your thoughts on that approach of just having multiple definitions?
I think you shouldn't have, well, I think it's a lot easier if you agree for these business terms to be unique.
Mm-hmm.
Makes it a lot easier. Some organizations, for example, though, they choose not to, but instead always provide the context. So they all call it customer, but then they have to put it in context saying, well, from a marketing point of view, or from a sales point of view, or from an HR point of view, or whatever. But that can be confusing. Like, it's always an issue in the way on how you're disseminating this information. Not everybody reading a report maybe would have access to that context. And especially when you look at that department view, you don't see the enterprise-wide piece all the time.
Yeah, it seems like there's a lot of like kind of tribal knowledge that would be associated with that too.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah,
So
exactly.
if like a team leaves, which most teams inevitably do roll over, you're kind of back to square one unless it's been encapsulated somewhere. But then you got to go look in your data dictionary if you have one. Usually it's probably in an email somewhere that somebody had sent about how things are defined, and then you can't find the email because
exactly. I have another story on the sort of customer piece. There's this, there was this, no, they actually did. I mean, they still work, but they don't operate as such anymore. This transport authority in the US and one of the cities I'm not going to mention, but they couldn't really agree on what ridership means and what does it mean for them to have a customer. And for the longest time, they had these weight plates, I guess. When you go in the front of the bus, you kind of step on this plate that would detect that, oh, somebody's stepping on it and means that somebody entered the bus, type of a thing, right? Or they would just look at the fare and scan how many coins you're putting in, or you're tapping in, or you're scanning your card. And for the longest time, that's one of the reasons why they would always control the traffic like that. You would always have to enter from the front of the bus and then get out in the back of the bus. It was a way for them to track how many riders they would have. And then they introduced the whole tapping thing, which meant that you could actually enter it anywhere, just because you would just have to tap in at any sort of tapping device in the bus. And while they were having this overlap, they really couldn't agree anymore on, well, how many people are riding the bus, really, because some departments were counting in the all-way, which also mean that sometimes they were able to capture riders that would not pay, because the driver okay, just go on, that's fine. But the way play would count them. And other departments would, embrace the new way of just, well, no, whoever taps, that's who we care about.
Interesting. How much of that do you think comes back to, I guess, incentives then for these departments? I would think that, if you're trying to calculate like ridership demand, for example, maybe a more pure metric is actually maybe the plate, because that tells you how many people are physically on there versus, whether or not you're making money off these people. I mean, what do you have any thoughts on that?
You bring a very interesting point, because I think that's also what's lacking. One of the big challenges with bringing data governance on board, and the challenges overall with data, is the change management piece. So whenever
Mm.
a change is being done, I don't think it's always put into context for everybody. I don't think it's really addressing the why. Why should you care as a department, and why should you care as an individual? So yeah, back to your incentive piece, I think that's always needs to be stated. It's saying, this is the change that we're implementing. This is why it's good. This is how it's going to help you as well. From the operations or planning department, for the ridership, this is why you should care of this new way, because we think it's more accurate, because this and that, because you can also track the people that are getting off the bus and where they are getting off the bus, so you can plan your routes better, and the bus capacity and this and that. So always putting the benefit and what it means to that particular unit, not just the organization as a whole, I think creates a lot of value, and it really increases the chance of that department following suit and getting on board with what the change you're bringing.
That's such a good point. Yeah, I mean, because at the end, every team is its own kind of tribe, right? And that's kind of how it is. You might be a tribe within a bunch of other tribes in an organization, but at the end of the day, like the team you're on is a team that you're going to, um, you know, be interested in bending the whatever definitions to how you're going to benefit. So,
and I think it's fascinating that when you look at it, like, we're all working for the same organization, so in essence, we all have the same goal that we're trying to achieve there. But sometimes it feels like, oh, it's kind of us against them type of a mentality.
mm-hmm.
Yeah. So context helps.
Yeah, and I guess that's where the executive sponsorship would help too, because at least at that point, you have a tiebreaker or a referee, so to speak.
Yeah, and it's not any executive, but I think it's one that should be a true leader, not just by title alone. I think it's one that kind of has the sway and influence over people, and is able to communicate properly and disseminate that communication and convince people on your behalf as well on why they should get on board.
I mean, that's an interesting thought, though, because I mean, you bring up like the vendors trying to scare people with the the $400 million fine kind of pitch. I mean, it seems like an executive would then be, I guess, messaging from like a defensive standpoint versus we should be doing this for these reasons because data drives us forward from an offensive position, not just we got to avoid getting fined, so let's do data governance. So
yeah, and that's definitely what works with some C-level executives. That's sort of the stick approach, and nobody wants to get fined or lose some reputational damage. So that's definitely a big thing for sure. But I think it's more than that. I think it brings all these other data operations benefits. Like, it increases efficiency and service levels on like anything related to security and privacy and data quality and metadata management and data integration, and and plus reduces the costs in all of these too.
Mm-hmm.
And then on the business operations too, I mean, just tying data to anything, like basically anybody that's leveraging data, sales and marketing, business and data analytics, research, customer service and support, financial services, supply chain, risk and compliance. Anybody that's using data, I think you can tie back to their own business needs and see how data governance can help with that and the benefits that it brings there.
Mm-hmm. That's awesome. Kind of trying to lights on data and the work you're doing with I think spreading the good word about data governance. Hey, walk the audience through that progression. I know you kind of hit on that you do this and you started it for a variety of reasons, but I mean, what's the mission and what are you trying to do with Lights On?
So, Joe, initially it actually started to provide content specifically for nonprofits, education, governmental, or sort of like healthcare organizations, and because healthcare in other worlds is supported by the government, it's not for profit per se. So, and why? It's because those areas tend to be underserved. They wouldn't have the same budget as corporations would have, to pay for training and conferences and things like that in the same way that corporations would or for profits would. But as I slowly started to release content, I would get engagement from all over, regardless if they're nonprofit or for profit. So I thought, oh, people like anybody interested in this is actually interested in this. They're not just from the nonprofit sector. So it kind of grew, and now it really expanded to serve anybody. But at the core of it, I'm really trying to simplify things. I feel there's a lot of blah blahs, a lot of theory on these things. And like you said, sometimes you're leaving even more confused after you're going to the topic. So based on my experience and that of others, I'm trying to, again, simplify things, put a practical point on it, provide examples, provide templates, something that you can actually put your eyes on it, put your hands on it, and then apply the next day at work if you had to.
That's interesting. Yeah, because I mean, I think to echo your point, a lot of the stuff I've seen so far has been very hand wavy. Like it makes you wonder if the people who wrote a lot of these materials have actually done anything with data, or if they just like talk about it all day. So, not to be crass, but it's because I feel like in order to convey a subject, that you should be able to simplify it down into something that a layperson like myself could understand, right? And so often I feel like a lot of this stuff just looks like it's been written by committees upon committees of people. And I think in some cases that's literally true. But what it means too is like the essence of data governance, data management, it remains this very opaque kind of squishy thing that, when anyone tries to look at it, they're like, I guess that seems like something. I'm not sure what it was. It seems more kind of like a blob. And so so thanks for trying to simplify things. I mean, so it seems like it's a topic too that I'd be fascinated to understand. Like, how are you trying to teach like a noob like me, about say data governance? Like, what would how have you found it as an effective way to communicate these things?
And I just want to add something before. I think it's in a way similar to the data science field that's also continuously evolving. And it really means different things depending on where you are on that level of your experience, you can define it in different ways, I guess, or from your own needs. And
data science for sure is like that right now.
Yeah. And in a way, data management, data governance, maybe that's why there is so much confusion, because it's also expanding as we're introducing new things and new challenges. Maybe that's my excuse for why we have so many different definitions and a lot of like vagueness on it all. But yeah, to answer your question, well, I try and provide examples. First of all, I try to provide a lot of analogies. So if anybody wants to check out my videos on YouTube, I try to provide analogies and actually show you different things. Things like some of these examples that I mentioned to you as well, with the ridership and the telecom. And yeah, I try to put it in context as much as I can.
That's really helpful. And how's it been going? I mean, it's like, as we pointed out, data governance is probably like the sexiest topic in the universe. So I mean, how are you getting people interested in this? I mean, it's an incredibly important topic, but but the word governance alone, probably people are just like, oh, I'll go to the science one over there, the data science one.
Yeah, I know. I'm actually, I'm contemplating of doing something like data governance for data science.
That would be awesome.
Just to see really how is it relevant for data scientists and what data scientists could do to, preach this importance further. But how do I keep it interesting?
Data governance for data engineers would be great too. And maybe you can come speak at my meetup sometime about this.
It'd be a pleasure.
Yeah, it'd be awesome. Oh, sorry, cut you off. What were you gonna say?
How do I keep it, engaging? Well, it kind of really depends on the platform. So on the Lights on Data show, we're trying to always have interesting, guests such as yourself that talk about all these different fields, and we always kind of try and bring in the data governance piece as well. But it depends on the medium. Memes help with the 20-year-olds, for example. And I enjoy a good meme. But just trying to share really useful content and trying to share content that's engaging to the eyes. So I wouldn't say sensational, because I think that's a different other thing, but Yeah,
Was it you the other day who had the meme with the person on the ladder, or was it somebody else?
I think that's somebody else.
To me, it's okay. I thought it was a data governance related one. Anyway, there's so many memes floating around on LinkedIn, especially right now. It's sort of hard to keep track.
Yeah, yeah.
So, speaking of LinkedIn too, I kind of, I mean, we both kind of float in some of the same data circles a bit. Like, walk me through your progression. I mean, I would consider you an influencer at this point. Whether a term is cliched or not, I guess besides the point. But you do have a very big following. I mean, how did you end up, I guess, growing your audience on social media?
And I've been surprised about the growth. I think I really put a lot more, let's say, effort into it. Maybe half a year before the pandemic started. And then during the pandemic, having this extra free time of not having to commute, I really put it back into LinkedIn. And I think went from, posting once a week to posting almost on a daily basis, if not more than once a day, just because I have so much content that I want to share. And yeah, it really grew exponentially to your point. I think now it's like reaching 1,000 new followers a week, to be honest. And I'm a little bit surprised about that. And it's also, I think, what really got me a kick in the right direction was the support from the groups that we both participate in,
Mhm.
and really support from the likes of Scott Taylor in particular, who really motivate. I think he's the first person he got in touch with me that we kind of thought of alike, and we got in touch on LinkedIn, and really motivated me to be more active. And he really sort of showed me the ways on how he could deliver great content, and not just be a consumer but also a creator. And then
Mhm.
likes of Kate and Susan and Ravit, and yeah, everybody's really quite an inspiration.
Yeah, it's awesome. Yeah, you remind me a lot of Scott Taylor, actually. I mean, different personality types. Scott's like he's like the David Letterman of the data world, I think. So, um, but I mean, it's kind of cool. Everyone's got their own take on stuff, and I think it's awesome that you and Scott as well. I mean, you operate in very similar domains, right? Data management. He's kind of more of the MDM guy, but
Yeah,
I think it's
yeah,
really
master
cool. And
data.
I was talking about this the other day with somebody. I think it's awesome just because I think content, it's one of those things that it's not like a zero sum game, for example. So it's not like, if you buy, say, a data warehouse, right? Like you're typically going to get like one vendor. You're not going to buy five of them because that would be weird. Um, but with content, right? Like, all of us support each other, with posts, courses and stuff. I think courses is a big one. I
Yeah,
see a lot of people with courses. And the thing is, I think they're all additive in some ways. Just because you get one course doesn't mean you can't buy the other one, and so on and so forth, right? Because knowledge is one of those things. It's
yeah,
not finite. It's not a zero sum game in
yeah,
that respect.
yeah.
So,
Yeah, I was talking to some people and they were surprised on how we are supporting each other on like cross promotion for courses, and even
mm,
being on the show, and sharing each other's content and stuff like that. And I was like, I mean, we're not really competing, even though there might be some overlap. I think there's really room for everybody, and it's great to share. I mean, let's feed the knowledge as much as we can, and get it out there. Whereas before, I think there was more a mentality of like, okay, I learned something, I want to keep it for myself, so that's my
mhm,
competitive advantage. But I feel, we would all benefit so much more if we would share more.
mhm. Yeah, I agree because uh, you're giving visibility to the field. And like that's, I think, a big thing too, especially data governance. Like I think it needs kind of a data governance 2.0 almost, is my opinion. Like the old ways of doing it back in the 90s and 2000s and stuff. I think it's like kind of old hat. Like it needs like a new kick in the pants, so to speak. And so
Yeah,
I'm glad people
yeah.
like yourself are going out there and just kind of reinvigorating it.
And I mean, like, I see your content as well, Joe, which is amazing, and again, creating so much value. And you're, another person that doesn't kind of keep stuff for themselves, thinking, well, that's what makes me valuable. No, it's really your own experience, your own knowledge for sure, but you're really adding value by helping others.
Yeah, it's weird too because I think the more you keep adding, the more inquiries you get as a business too. It's very odd. It's
Very
more
true.
free stuff you give away. People want to work with you, even though in some cases it's exactly the same thing that you just said. But it's the old Tony Robbins effect, I suppose. Like he's written a couple, few books, and for what, like $10 or something, or you can spend like $500,000 and go hang out with him and listen to the same thing. You just get to do, I guess, do firewalks and stuff with him, but.
I didn't know Tony Robbins had that offer.
Yeah, I had a friend that went to one of his events, so she was stoked. But at the end of the day, I was like, "So did you learn anything new that you didn't learn from like reading his books or anything?" She's like, "Nah, no, but it's about the experience, I suppose, right?"
Yeah,
so,
yeah. I guess it's kind of like going to a football match instead of seeing it on TV.
Yeah,
You get the energy of the place.
So, I mean, I see a lot on social media. I mean, what else do you do when you're not on social media?
Prepare content for social media. No, I love hiking. It's one of my passions, and I love traveling, and I didn't get to do that for the past year and a bit. So I'm looking forward to get back to it. And I enjoy surfing, though I'm horrible at it. I'm really an amateur surfer, but I really love being in the water and hitting those waves and trying to go against them, getting smashed by them. Maybe that's
That's
a weird thing to like, but
you're in Vancouver,
I enjoy
right?
nature. I am in Vancouver, yes.
Nice. Where do you like to go surf there?
On Vancouver Island, which is like kind of next to us, and there's this coast where there's nothing else between us and Japan, I guess. There's like these massive waves that come. It's unstructured view of the ocean, whereas here in Vancouver you have all the little islands. We're kind of in this sort of Gulf area. And on Vancouver Island on the coast there, this place called Tofino, it's this like very
I've heard of this
hippie
place. Yeah,
town, but it has a very docile vibe, and everybody relaxing and drinking their lattes and eating their tacofinos, which is like this Tofino invented burrito, which is like a Mexican West Coast mix. And try and surf.
that's awesome. Yeah, I've heard a lot of cool things about Tofino. I need to go out there sometime. I've climbed in Squamish before. That place is pretty cool.
No way. Yeah, so did I. I used to climb.
You did? Oh,
yeah.
That's cool. Yeah. Nice.
510 was my, I think, the maximum at which I was able to get to.
Okay, that's a fun grade though. So, yeah.
What grade are you, Joe?
I'm probably right now. I would think I can probably do 512 pretty easy. Wow. But I used to do like 13 plus, maybe 14 minus for routes, and then bouldering. Like I think I flashed a V10 once for bouldering. So that's I think like 514 equivalent, but it's hard to judge bouldering against routes. But yeah, so
right.
But that was back when I was like stronger and not as fat. I'm not fat, but larger, more muscly. So
that is fit, yeah.
I started lifting a lot, after I quit climbing, and I still climb, a few days a week though. So Salt Lake's really good for that. It's kind of like Vancouver in some ways, where when the weather's good, like you can get out, except for today because it's like 100 degrees and there's fire smoke everywhere. But
yeah, I've been in Salt Lake once, and it's amazing. And then just been up north in Zion.
And, oh, nice! It's a really pretty place.
Yeah, great hikes. Didn't climb there, too difficult for me, but great hikes.
Plus it's all trad too. I don't trad climb that much, but yeah, that's cool. Yeah, it's interesting. I also used to live in Bellingham, a bit south of Vancouver. So I actually used to spend a lot of time there when I was a teenager. So I used to skateboard across the border back in the day in '94 and '5 back when you could do that kind of stuff. I think you could take the train from or the bus from Bellingham to the SkyTrain for like $1.25 round trip.
Wow.
So, yeah, it's probably changed a bit. So that's cool.
Yeah, I remember the days when you could just cross the border with your like driver license and
simpler times. So that's awesome. How long have you been in Vancouver?
Since '98. I moved from Romania with my parents, so that's where I'm from originally. Hence my accent, and I've been here ever since.
Dang, you've seen that city change quite a bit, then I'm sure. So yeah,
it has been. It's becoming expensive.
It always has been expensive.
I guess so.
Maybe more expensive than usual.
But it's more expensive.
Yeah, the only thing I found cheap there was sushi. So
Which is one of my favorite foods, by the way.
that's awesome. Good choice. So, yeah, that's a cool. Yeah, I guess whenever the borders are back open, if I'm up in the area, I'll come hit you up. So
Likewise,
that's
likewise.
awesome. Yeah, for sure. Well, cool. I think we're coming up on time, but for people who want to find out more about you, how can they do that?
Please just go to lightsondata.com and check me out on the YouTube channel. Follow me on LinkedIn. Get in touch with me. Always love to meet new people, virtual or in person. So yeah, hit me
Yeah,
up.
awesome, man. Well, cool. Thanks for coming on the Data Nerd Herd today. So learned a lot about data governance, and looking forward to talking to you more about it. So
Thank you, Joe.
it's cool. Thank you.